Hey, what's up YouTube? I just played the number 2 spot against DaSpoofy. He's number 2 spot in UU. And I just wanted you guys to see this battle. As he leads off with his Mega Swamper, I'm going to lead off with my Mega Beedrill. And I'm just going to fire off a U-turn, get some nice damage on that Swamper. I see Kingdra's not all that helpful in this game, so I go ahead and sack this off. I'm going to make the double into my Rotom Heat. As he makes the double into his Arcanine, I go for the trick. As I am Scarfed, he's banded. It kind of works out, not really. As he just goes for a Flare Blitz, I'm going to go for a Volt Switch, go out into my Donphan. I'm going to go ahead and set up the rocks here. As he switches out into his Tangrowth, I'm going to switch out into my Toxicroak. Honestly, I did not expect the Sleep Powder, so Toxicroak gets put to sleep as he's going to knock off my Life Orb, and I'm going to continue to try and wake up here, just burning out these sleep turns. As he switches out into a Slowking, and his Slowking ends up being a Calm Binder. I wake up here, I go for the Poison Jab, I notice that that does absolutely nothing. So I'm going to have to scare this thing out. As I go straight out in my Mega Beedrill, I'm going to go for the U-turn right here, as I know he's going to switch. As he goes out into his Empoleon, continuously trying to get rid of the rocks. So I'm going to go out in my Rotom Heat, I'm going to try and trick him. As that unfortunately doesn't work, as he goes out into his Swamper, I'm going to go to Kingdra to sack it off. And after that, I go back to my Beedrill. I'm going to go for the Protect just to see what he goes for. I knew he was going to switch, but I just didn't know what into. So, go for the Protect again just to see what he's going to use. I'm going to go switch out into my Slowking, as Slowking's going to be able to eat it up. He's going to switch out into his Empoleon, continuously trying to get rid of those rocks, as it's going to definitely hinder his team. I'm going to go for the T-Wave, expecting the Empoleon to come out. Thankfully, he gets paralyzed. And I go out in my Donphan as he goes out into his Tangrowth again. I'm just going to fire off an EQ. And then I'm just going to continue to fire off an Ice Shard as he's going to put me to sleep. And I'm going to switch out into my Rotom Heat, and he's going to knock off my Choice Band, as I figured he would use Knockoff. So that's great. And now he goes out to sack off his dogs. I'm going to try and trick that Tangrowth, but that ends up happening, and what he doesn't expect is a Hidden Power Grass that I actually run that I never showed to him. He was very upset about that. And now I'm going to go for the Volt Switch on his Empoleon, as that's going to do a lot of damage, hoping it gets paralyzed, and I'm going to try and burn off some sleep turns by going out into my Donphan. Unfortunately, he gets a defog off as he finally breaks through paralysis. I'm going to go for the EQ. No, actually, I stay asleep here. I stay asleep for quite a long time. But I finally wake up here, and I'm just going to set up those rocks again as he goes for Leaf Storm. And that's going to take me. I'm going to go straight out in my Beedrill. I'm going to go for the U-turn, as I'm going to expect him to go for Sleep Powder, as he actually goes for a knockoff. So that's interesting. And he goes out into a Slowking. I'm going to go for the Overheat, trying to just destroy that Tangrowth. Unfortunately, he switches. I'm going to go for the Volt Switch, as I still see my Rotom Heat still putting in some work, as he's finally going to fire off a Scald. So that kind of tells me what kind of set his Slowking is. He's going to switch out into his Empoleon, trying to get that defog off, as he finally gets it off, unfortunately. And now that he finally gets it off, he sees his Empoleon is not very useful anymore, as I go for the knockoff to finish that thing off. As he switches out into his Tangrowth, and I go for a really risky play here. I go for the Poison Jab. I knew it wouldn't KO, but I was hoping perhaps he'd miss his Sleep Powder. I'm going to burn off one turn of sleep as he goes out into his Entei. Entei throws out a Sacred Fire as I switch out into Slowking, and then he switches out into his Slowking, and then I fire off a Toxic. And this is kind of stally, as we both cannot switch, as it would be bad for us. So we just continue to fire off Scalds at each other, and he finally snags a burn, which is unfortunate, as that's going to hinder my Slowking down quite a bit. So he's going to pull out a switch into his Tangrowth again. I'm going to fire off another Scald, which does some pretty decent damage, actually. And I'm going to pull the switch out into my Beedrill, as he also pulls another switch out into his Slowking. I cannot stay in, as I know he runs the Psyshock, so I have to switch back out into my Slowking. And, let's see. Right here, he's going to pull out another switch out into his Tangrowth. I'm going to fire off another Scald, because why not? As, now, I'm going to pull out another switch, hoping he doesn't switch out, as it goes off for the knockoff, as that's not going to do too much to my Mega Beedrill. As I finally get to wake up here right now, thankfully, as I go for the Poison Jab, and his Slowking is definitely taking a lot of damage, and I go for the U-turn, so now the Slowking is really hurt bad. The Slowking is actually taken out, excuse me. As I'm going to switch out into my Slowking, he goes out into his Tangrowth. He's going to go for the Sleep Powder as I switch out into my Rotom Heat as Sleep Fodder. I'm going to switch out into my Mega Beedrill. He unfortunately switches out into his Entei, which is bad for me. I go for the Protect just to scout to see what he's going to go for. He goes for the Extreme Speed, as I'm going to switch out into my Slowking here. And that does a lot, so that's definitely banded. And I'm just going to slack off. And right here, he switches out, unfortunately, as I could have fired off a Scald, or T-Wave would have been better. I'm going to switch out as well in my Rotom Heat, but I have to switch right back out in my Slowking, as this is where the game changes right here. As he goes for E-Speed, I go for a slack off. Not the best play on my part. And he gets crit. And that definitely changed the game, as that definitely ensures that he wins. So, unfortunately for me, I lose this match. But to be able to play against the person who is number 2 on the ladder of UU, and to do this well against him, I'm proud of what I did. Unfortunately, I could have walked away with a win, although it would have been very difficult, but still, that crit definitely mattered. But anyways, thank you, and take care of yourselves.